Denmark's involvement in the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651, was minimal, as the kingdom was preoccupied with its own regional concerns in Northern Europe. During this period, Denmark was still reeling from the aftermath of the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, which had left much of the continent in turmoil. Despite this, Denmark's position as a Protestant monarchy meant that it had some level of interest in the conflict, particularly in supporting Protestant causes. However, Denmark did not directly intervene in the English Civil War and remained focused on local issues in Scandinavia. Denmark's domestic and regional priorities. At the time of the English Civil War, Denmark, ruled by King Christian IV until his death in 1648, was engaged in its own regional conflicts and political challenges. The Dano-Swedish War, 1657 to 1658, would later erupt after the English Civil War had concluded, marking a significant military concern for Denmark. Given these preoccupations, Denmark's attention was primarily directed toward its immediate neighbors, particularly Sweden and Poland, rather than becoming directly involved in the civil strife in England. Moreover, Denmark's involvement in the 30 Years' War had drained its resources, and the kingdom was more focused on recovering from the war and strengthening its position in Northern Europe. Thus, despite the religious and political elements of the English Civil War, Denmark did not play a significant role in the conflict. Denmark's religious position. Like many other Protestant states in Europe, Denmark sympathized with the parliamentarians in the English Civil War, who were fighting against the royalists led by King Charles I. The parliamentarians were largely Protestant and were seen as a counterforce to the Catholic monarch. Given Denmark's long-standing commitment to Protestantism, it shared the religious values of the parliamentarians, although this shared ideology did not lead to direct military support. However, Denmark's political and military resources were largely dedicated to securing its own interests in Scandinavia, particularly in light of the tensions with neighboring Catholic countries like Sweden and Poland. As a result, Denmark refrained from sending soldiers or aid to England during the Civil War. Mercenary connections and limited involvement. Although Denmark did not engage in the war directly, it is possible that some Danish soldiers, like those from other European states, participated as mercenaries. The practice of hiring mercenaries was common during the period, and it is likely that some Danish-speaking soldiers fought in the conflict, though their numbers and influence were insignificant compared to other nations like Sweden or France. Diplomatic relations with England. Despite Denmark's lack of military involvement, the English Civil War did affect diplomatic relations between Denmark and England. The war disrupted trade and diplomacy between many European states, including Denmark and England. However, both kingdoms shared a common interest in protecting Protestantism, which allowed for some degree of diplomatic cooperation. The conflict in England, though not directly involving Denmark, would have been closely observed by the Danish court, as the outcome could have ramifications for Protestantism in Europe. Post-war impact. After the conclusion of the English Civil War and the eventual restoration of Charles II in 1660, Denmark resumed its focus on regional concerns in Northern Europe, particularly the ongoing conflicts with Sweden. By this time, the Danish monarchy had largely recovered from the economic and military strain of the 30 Years' War and was focused on securing its position in the Baltic. In the broader European context, Denmark remained an important Protestant power, but its involvement in the English Civil War did not significantly shape the kingdom's future. Denmark's legacy in the conflict is one of passive interest rather than active intervention. Conclusion. Denmark's role in the English Civil War was limited and largely passive. While it shared religious sympathies with the parliamentarians, the kingdom was more concerned with its own regional issues in Scandinavia and its position relative to Sweden and Poland. Denmark did not send soldiers or aid to the English Civil War and refrained from direct intervention. Despite this, the conflict did influence diplomatic relations and shaped the broader European context, but Denmark's involvement remained tangential.